The psalmist David writes, "The Lord is my shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely your goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." This might be familiar. I chose Psalm 23 this morning for my last sermon as your co-lead pastor. And I think it's because its familiarity will be a comfort to us in change, and also because its call to the grand scope of following Jesus is a charge to us as we choose to be led by God. A God that knows who we are. A God that knows the way. A God that knows how we walk. A God who knows where we are ultimately headed. And instead of one long sermon, I have chosen 6 sermonettes, because why preach just one last sermon when you can preach 6 sermons? But I promise I'll stay within the time limit. Sermonette number 1. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. Most shepherds, if not all shepherds, are taller than the sheep that they care for. The average sheep, I looked this up on Google, stands no taller than 4 feet head to hoof. And there's so much to see from 4 feet tall, of course. Our kids could tell you that. But there is also so much to be missed at only 4 feet. And when you're out in a grand landscape with a lot of things to both pursue but also be protected from, 4 feet doesn't give you a lot of perspective. A shepherd of any height greater than the sheep can see beyond the herd. A good shepherd can see beyond where the herd is presently, which is essential to the shepherding role. A good shepherd must be able to see beyond the present existence of the sheep so that they are cared for and they are preserved from harm and they are prepared to go where and when the shepherd leads them. The Hebrew word shepherd is ra'ah, and it's used to name a person who holds the role of tending to sheep or other livestock too. But it could be cows, it could be goats, but ra'ah, a person who tends to a flock. And we aren't always sweet sheep, let's be honest about that. If we're to use the metaphor that we are a flock, sometimes we are bulls and we are full of it. But thank you so much. But ra'ah, shepherd, in its many forms, can mean shepherd, but it can also mean someone that you're associated with or to be a friend of. You see, to be associated with a flock is what makes a person a shepherd. A shepherd isn't a shepherd without a flock. And also a flock isn't a flock without a shepherd. And you can be associated with a shepherd as an individual sheep, but when you are a flock of sheep, that's really how you are associated with a shepherd. Relationship to one another defines each other's identity. Because the Lord is our shepherd, we know who we are, and we know what we are, and we know where we are. Because the Lord is our shepherd, our identity is found in being sheep with a shepherd. And what we truly need to have a sense of self and belonging and purpose and belovedness and hope, is all found in relation to our good shepherd. Because we have a good shepherd, we have everything we need. Sermonette number 2. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. Now, I've never talked with a sheep about their inner psyche, but I can imagine that sheep do experience some distress in their existence, namely hunger and thirst and attack from other creatures. I don't imagine there's a lot of drama going on, but there could be. We just don't speak sheep. So really, sheep need just a few things to know that their needs are going to be met. They need grass, they need water, and they need a safe place to rest. It's simple for sheep. It's not as simple for us, but maybe we could follow the line of simplicity into rest. If we let the Good Shepherd lead us back to the basics, ground and water. Have you ever heard of grounding? Grounding. It's this thing, maybe you think it's woo-woo. It might be woo-woo. Over there. Brenda's over there. You can talk to Brenda in the back after the service if you're interested in grounding. Thank you. Grounding is like this. You take off your shoes and you stand barefoot in the grass or on ground. You let your body touch the earth. And the idea is that this kind of contact can transfer electrons from the earth to the body, which can potentially reduce inflammation and overstimulation, and therefore contributes to your overall well-being. He makes me lie down in green pastures. Or have you ever heard of a pediatrician's best advice for a fussy baby? No, it is not whiskey, okay? Our pediatrician said this: just add water. Just add water. For some babies, being near water, hearing the sound of running water, or taking a bath, or even just playing in the water for a little bit, helps calm their nervous system, especially when they're overstimulated. These doctors guess that the sensation of water reminds them of being in the womb, surrounded by amniotic fluid, a place where all of their needs were met and they lacked nothing. A good shepherd knows what we need to refresh our souls. Still waters and green pastures are a metaphor that David is using to describe some of the conditions that settle a soul. But there may be some validity to actually literally lying in the grass and playing in the water. A spiritual mentor suggested to me recently that I find some time to float in the water. And as I float, to remember my baptism. She was suggesting this: lead yourself or be led into quiet waters. Grounding and adding water doesn't fix our souls. It doesn't resolve all the issues that we are inundated with, but it does hold our souls up to reality, both physical and spiritual. And having our souls held up to reality is a gift for our souls to be refreshed. Sermonette number 3. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley or the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you, God, are with me. You've heard me and others talk before about the fear response in the body. What you may be familiar with as fight, flight, freeze. We've talked about this some in our 4.5 years together. Our body wants to stay alive, and so it activates a response in order to do that, to stay alive. When we fight, we battle a threat, real or perceived. When we flight, we put distance between ourselves and that threat so that that threat can't get so close. Or we freeze, we go still, we go silent, or we tense up in order to trick the threat that we might already be dead or not worth it. But there are two other response activations that happen that we don't talk about very much. And that is flop and friend. Those are my words for it. You can look them up on some sort of psychiatric thing. Flop is when you submit to the threat. Your body goes limp, your energy falls. Sometimes people lose consciousness when this happens. They figure it's better to just not be aware and devoured than to be aware and devoured. Flop. And then the last one is friend. When all of these other systems don't work for us, we attach. In friending, we turn to the nearest person and we say to them often wordlessly, see me, hear me, save me. If fighting the source of the fear hasn't worked, if running away isn't a possibility, then maybe another person can come to our aid and rescue us. These are involuntary responses that our brain has when we experience a fearful moment. If one of the human body-brain responses to fear is to attach to friend, the nearest person, then I have some good news for you. Jesus is with you. The whole story of God throughout all of Scripture is this one thing. God says, I am with you. God never leaves. And in the valleys of shadows of death and heartache, it may feel like pain overrides any sense of God's presence with us. And that pain causes more fear and more pain. But Jesus does not leave us when we are in pain or when threats to our body or soul come to us. No, Jesus leans in. And Jesus particularly has the ability to lean in because Jesus knows the valley of the shadow of death. Jesus knows death. Jesus went all the way through the most horrific death on the cross, all the way into the grave, the valley of death itself, so that when his beloved humanity found themselves in the same place, they would not have to fear because Jesus had already been there. There is no place. There is no place that we can go where Jesus has not been. And so there isn't a place we find ourselves that Jesus isn't willing, able, already desiring to meet us and bring us through. Even the valley of the shadow of death. Sermonette number 4. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. A shepherd's hook is a very useful instrument. We like the look of it in biblical dramas and plays. It's cute. But in actual shepherding, where a person is in charge of sheep, it is how the sheep come to know the shepherd. The staff is the tool by which comfort and trust is developed between the shepherd and the sheep. And here's how. After a lamb is born, a staff brings a lamb back to its ewe if the ewe gets confused. If a human were to touch that lamb, the ewe would not be as willing to produce milk for that lamb. And so that little staff carefully brings the lamb back into an intimate relationship with its mother, where the lamb can be tended to and nourished. And then the lamb understands that staff to be something of a safeguard. That this staff, this wooden thing, would actually bring me back into intimate relationship, not hurt me. The shepherd's hook is also used for close inspection of the sheep. You see, oftentimes sheep can get hurt. They'll trip or they'll fall or they'll get wounds on their underneaths. And so the staff is actually used to lift up the sheep and to look underneath, to really assess the wounds and the pain that may have occurred. And as the shepherd then sees what's going on underneath, the shepherd can care for those wounds in the proper way. Finally, the staff is used to guide the sheep as they move along. I think so often we have assumed that a shepherd's staff is used to whack people or sheep into movement. But actually, no. The staff is really only used so that as the sheep are moving, the shepherd can direct their movement. Sometimes they use the blunt end, the uncurved end, to poke the ribs of a sheep to go in the right direction. Painful, certainly, but useful. And then the hook may be used to grab them away from danger if they start wandering off in a way that could lead to their destruction. That hook preserves their life. I wonder if it's time to get reacquainted with the Good Shepherd's hook that brings you into healthy relationship with self and with others, that gently exposes your wounds so that the Good Shepherd might care for your hurt and your heartache. A hook that would guide you along, guide me along as we move, protecting us from danger, but also directing us, maybe telling us in our ribs. Sermonette number 5. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. These next two sections bring me to invitations for you, dear Newport, in your next seasons of ministry. But first, a story. It was a particularly difficult day for me in junior high. In junior high, everyone has the potential to be an enemy, even if they don't mean to be, and everyone has the potential to receive of an enemy, even if they're not trying to make any. It's just the nature of adolescence and that time. My day had rounded up with a few enemies before lunch, and it wasn't hopefully, well, you'll find out. It started with me noticing that I had a hole in my sweater on the way to school, which was noticed in excess by fellow classmates. And then it dovetailed into a complete shame experience when I returned to my math class from using the restroom, trailing toilet paper stuck to my shoe. I was humiliated. And you know what it's like to be in junior high. I wanted to spend the rest of the day hiding. And this was all before lunch. And as I entered the lunchroom, assuming that I would have to find a seat by myself to eat alone, back turned so that no one paid attention to me, a friend waved me over. She had been in my math class, and she had seen the trail of toilet paper and my beet red face. She knew about the hole in my sweater, and she could surmise how unfit I felt that day. And so she waved me over, and all I hoped was for her to say, like, I saved a seat for you, come sit by me. We'll let it all go. That would have been kindness enough, but she didn't say that. She looked me in the eye and she said, I've been waiting for you. It wasn't just that I had a place to sit at her round table to make it through the lunch period and hopefully through the rest of the day. It was that she wanted to be with me. Despite all the things that had made me feel like I was unfit to be with her, she wanted to be with me. Newport Covenant, I keep thinking about the people out there. People driving on Coal Creek Parkway and Factoria. The ones who are going to start school right across the street this week. I can't shake the ones who have never felt known by Jesus. I can't shake the ones who have never felt like they were ever invited to sit with Jesus, to be received at Jesus' table, to know that Jesus is waiting for them no matter the holes in their life or the trails of shame that follow them or the stigma or the pain that keep them from ever entering into a church building. I think about the ways that you are equipped to go out into that wide world and let people know that the God of the universe has set a table for them. And that same God is waiting for them, despite the holes and the shame. Come. I keep thinking that this good news of tables set for others won't actually be experienced in these walls first. But that the good news of a God that waits and sets a table is actually going to happen outside of these walls for the first time. In homes and in restaurants, maybe office buildings, maybe homeless shelters, maybe parks or on street corners. It will happen in the relationships that you build and foster and develop. And it will happen not because this space has seats for people here, but because God is so interested in feeding and loving and blessing people that it doesn't matter the number of seats that are in here, there are seats out there, for God waits. You know how to set a table. You know how to set a table for people in here. You know how to make space for people in here. And so you are beautifully poised to do it out there. Sermonette number 6. Surely your goodness and mercy will follow us all the days of our lives, and we will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. I learned this week that while sheep have very excellent vision, I didn't know if you know that, but knew that, but while sheep have excellent vision, allowing them to see both the possibilities, but also predators in their line of sight, sheep cannot see behind them. And it makes sense, of course, for us too. We do not have eyes in the back of our head. It's a mystery back there until we turn around. And perhaps that's why God's goodness and mercy follow us. That God's mercy and goodness are behind us. They move behind us, not always ahead of us. God's goodness and mercy, God's hesed, which is the Hebrew word that means goodness, mercy, unrelenting love. It follows us along. It's mobile with us. It doesn't determine your direction. It doesn't force you to walk a certain way. No, hesed blesses the ground that you walk. It makes goodness and meaning and hope in the wake of your footsteps, however and wherever you walk. It is Pastor Paul and my certain conviction that as we go from this congregation, that God's goodness and mercy follow you. We pray that God's goodness and mercy are in the wake of what is left in our leaving. We trust that it's God's mercy that attends to the places of repair and healing that are left to do. We trust God's goodness to bring to fruition all that the Spirit made alive in our time together. We know that your days ahead corporately as a congregation and individually are very bright. And we are cheering you on as partners in the good news of Jesus, who is our good shepherd always.